All right. So up to this point, we've just been talking about groups kind of in a general sense, but now let's talk about formal organizations. So a bureaucracy is a type of formal organization, and formal organizations refer to large, impersonal groups. So think of like big corporations, businesses, etc., would be typically be considered formal organizations. Now, like I said, a bureaucracy is a type of formal organization, but it has more specific characteristics. The first characteristic of a bureaucracy is that it involves a hierarchy of authority. They also have a clear division of labor. They have very explicit rules, and they are known to be impersonal. A lot of impersonality with formal organizations. They sound fun, right, with bureaucracies. So examples of bureaucracies could be TAMUCC, right, or the Texas A&M University System. Walmart, right? Large businesses, large companies, large universities, hospitals, etc. are very good, typically, examples of bureaucracies. So every bureaucracy has, like I've said, a hierarchy of authority, meaning that there is a very clear chain of command found in every bureaucracy. So for example, in the university system, right? If I have a concern with the way that the university is organizing its courses and offering courses in online and versus face-to-face formats, I wouldn't go straight to the president of the university with this concern, right? I have a very clear chain of command. When I have concerns about issues, my first point of contact is the chair. The chair of my department, if the issue is serious enough, may go up to the associate dean of our college. The associate dean may take the issue to the dean of the college. The dean of the college may take it to the provost of the university. And then the provost may take it to the president of the university, right? So there's a really clear hierarchy of authority and a clear chain of command in bureaucracies. It's rarely common that an individual in a bureaucracy or a member of a bureaucracy would go straight to the top leader of the bureaucracy because there's a clear chain of command to follow. The other quality is a clear division of labor. Each member of a bureaucracy, each individual in a bureaucracy has a specialized task to perform, right? So for example, as a professor at TAMUCC, my tasks are to teach students in the classes that I offer and to conduct research and then to serve on several department and university committees, right? It is not my job to ensure that the garbage cans get emptied out in the classrooms at the end of the day when I'm finished teaching, right? It's not my job to oversee the payroll for the employees in any different department or college on campus, right? So there's a clear division of labor. Every member of your bureaucracy has a very specific set of tasks and job expectations, and these job expectations are often even written out in terms of formal rules or a formal contract, which leads to the next one. Bureaucracies have explicit rules. The rules for a bureaucracy, the expectations for members of a bureaucracy are very clearly outlined, recorded, and standardized. Bureaucracies typically will have like code of conduct, a worker's manual, etc., again, which really clearly outlines exactly what is to be expected and also really clearly outlines, what happens if a person's contributions to the bureaucracy are not meeting their expectations. So punishment, basically. What happens if you break the rules of the bureaucracy? What will happen to you? Will you get fired? Do you get suspended, etc.? The last quality of bureaucracies is impersonality. They are very, very impersonal. They are designed to remove the personal feelings from a professional situation or organization. So bureaucracies, having these written rules in place and the clear division of labor and the hierarchy of authority are all standardized procedures to ensure that emotions can be removed from these things. You have these tasks that you need to complete in this position that you're in. This is what happens if you complete them appropriately. This are the consequences if you do not complete what's expected of you. So bureaucracies aren't really necessarily known for being warm and fuzzy. They're often more focused at accomplishing specific tasks that they have set out or functions that they are expected to fulfill as parts of the societies that they belong to. Some pros and cons of bureaucracies. Well, bureaucracies in theory are ideal formal organizations because they're intended to be efficient. The whole purpose of having bureaucracies in our society is to streamline efficiency, right? To ensure equal opportunities and to help society function smoothly. Having a clear chain of command makes it easy to know who to report to. If I have a question about something in my position as a professor here, I don't need to scramble and waste time trying to figure out who to go to. I'll just go straight to my chair, and then my chair can direct my question or concern to wherever it needs to go, right? I don't need to worry about taking on all of these random tasks to help the university function because I have a very clear and specific set of tasks that I know what to do that are very clearly outlined in my employee handbook. I know exactly what's expected of me. I know what I need to do to maintain my job. I know what I need to do to advance in my job. And I know what the consequences are if I don't fulfill the tasks of my job. So bureaucracies are intended to help society function smoothly. Structural functionalists love the idea of a bureaucracy because, in theory, bureaucracies are supposed to be very well-oiled machines where everyone has a specific set of tasks or functions to fulfill, and as long as everyone is being functional in their positions in the bureaucracy, society as a whole is going to operate like a well-oiled machine. However, the formalities and the impersonality of bureaucracies can often become dysfunctional. Red tape refers to the bureaucratic idea that rules are rules and they must be followed. If they're written down, if they're in the employee handbook, if they're in the rule book, they need to be followed, even if they make no frickin' sense. Even if they are completely asinine. Some rules just happen to make it into, the worker's manual because maybe 20, 30 years ago, these rules seem to make sense. And here we are 30 years later, and all of a sudden someone's reading the fine print in the employee handbook, and they're seeing like, why is it against the law for me to work? Why is it against our bureaucracy's rule book for me to work on a Sunday? Why can't I log hours on a Sunday, Or why do I need to complete this training that I just completed 6 months ago when nothing has changed? Well, because it's in the rule book, right? So that's this idea of red tape. This idea that if a rule is written down in the formal structure of a bureaucracy or a formal organization, it must be followed, and if it's not followed, even if it's a completely stupid rule in the first place that makes no sense, you can still get in trouble for it because that's how bureaucracies work. So here's a quick little video that goes into more detail to share some examples about what red tape actually looks like in real-world situations.
I'm asking you to make a donation before the September FEC deadline so that we can flip this.
America, once considered the land of opportunity, home of the American dream, where the entrepreneurial spirit thrives. But is all that a thing of the past? Now it seems a ridiculous bureaucracy has people jumping through hoops to start a business.
Can the government make entrepreneurs do useless things for no reason?
Yes, many business owners are finding today. Tanya Edwards and Bill Main own Segs in the City, in the heart of Washington, D.C.
The important thing is before you get on, make sure the green lights are there.
They guide their customers on tours throughout the nation's capital via Segway.
I want you to bring your feet forward 1 inch.
But what they're doing is illegal because they don't have a license to speak to tourists.
We could be sent to jail for 90 days for not having a license.
But he believes he shouldn't need a license to talk to people.
It's a breach of the First Amendment of the Constitution.
And they're not alone in fighting government bureaucracy to keep their business afloat. Want to become a florist in New Orleans? You must pass a test some say is more difficult than the bar exam to become a lawyer.
Completely subjective test that was evaluated by other florists who you were going to be competing against.
Or if you want to build a funeral home in St. Paul, Minnesota.
But the government is forcing him to spend $30,000 on a useless embalming room that he doesn't want and doesn't need.
These are just a few of the many occupational licensing cases the Institute for Justice says they're fighting against.
We're talking about the right to economic liberty here. This is the right of someone to earn an honest living in an occupation of their own choosing.
So how are these laws able to get enacted? Lobbyists and special interest groups, they infiltrate politics on the federal and local levels, urging lawmakers to pass regulations that benefit them and keep the competition out. The result, in America growing increasingly regulated. In the 1950s, 1 in 20 occupations required a government license. Today, it's 1 in 3. And all this red tape is costing taxpayers billions.
The Interior Department is in charge of salmon while they're in freshwater, but the Commerce Department handles them when they're in saltwater. I hear it gets even more complicated once they're smoked.
But it's no laughing matter. A report from the Government Accountability Office shows billions of dollars spent on bureaucratic waste in the federal government. All the while, President Obama vows to fight unemployment by creating jobs.
Tonight, my message to business leaders is simple. Ask yourselves what you can do to bring jobs back to your country, and your country will do everything we can to help you succeed.
But what the government needs to do, say many business owners, is get rid of all the red tape that's creating hurdles to reaching economic success. It may be too much regulation that's choking the life out of the U.S. economy. In Washington, Liz Wall, RT.
So this is where this gets a little tricky, right? At face value, we can see in some instances where having certain policies in place or regulations in place, certain licensures in place for businesses to have in order for them to stay open and to have, serve their guests or their constituents might be a good thing, right? So for an example, if you want to open up a restaurant, right? You need to get a license to ensure that your restaurant is clean enough, right? That you pass food safety, health expectations, right? Food safety inspectors are going to come in all the time and check you and make sure that you're following all these necessary regulations. If you want to sell alcohol, you'll need to have a liquor license, right? And all of these other licenses that you'll need to have. Now, this might seem like, okay, what's the big deal? Well, you're the one that needs to pay for those out of pocket, or your business or corporation that you work for has to pay for all those licenses to have. So what if you want, an individual, want to be an entrepreneur, right? Open up your own mom and pop shop, cafe, whatever, just because you make really good pies and you want to start selling these pies. Well, if you have to pay $1,000 every year to get this license renewed just so you can stay open, right? And think about how that's slowing down people and workers. And then question yourself, think like a sociologist, why would we have these rules in place? Why would we require that, a bakery needs to pay $1,000 a year just to be certified as a restaurant, to be recognized in the Bureau of Labor? Why would we require them to have pay for all these license fees and all these certifications and whatnot? Why can't we just let them open and be on their own? Well, ask yourself, who's to benefit from this? If you're requiring people to pay $1,000 a year, for these licenses that they have to renew every year, that money is going somewhere, right? It's going into the pockets of the power elite in our society, right? So this is a conflict theorist argument here. The reason why we have these regulations in place from a conflict theorist perspective is that they don't want just anyone to be able to open up a business, because if anyone can open up a business, then anyone can make money, right? Whereas if they have these rules and regulations in place that say if you open up a business, you need to pay this much money to get this license or to get this certification, then that money can go into the pockets of the power elite in our society, and it keeps them in power by keeping them getting more and more money. All the dollars that they're taking out of the pockets of the small business owner are going into the pockets of these wealthy executives and politicians, etc., and it's maintaining this power imbalance in our society by keeping the disenfranchised poor and making the rich richer through these rules and regulations that rich people are making, that rich politicians and lobbyists are making, because these special interest groups, like they said in the video, will essentially bribe a politician with hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars and say, hey, we'll put this towards your next campaign if you can pass this bill that requires this particular licensure or certification to be in place, so we can see the profits of that in our own pocket. And politicians will agree to that because they want to get reelected, right? That's this kind of sneaky side of politics that sociology helps us tap into, is that, the power that's at play here is a really important aspect of these bureaucracies. Bureaucracies can also result in alienation, which is a feeling of nothingness associated with workers being assigned segmented tasks and not being able to see their finished products. So treating workers like objects rather than individuals is also another negative connotation of bureaucracies, right? So if you think about, for example, if you worked on an assembly line, right, for a motor company, and your job was to assign the windshield wipers to every car, and that's all you did day in and day out was put the windshield wipers on the car and send it down the conveyor belt, put the windshield wiper on and send it down the conveyor belt. But you never get to see that brand spanking new car, that finished product that you had a hand in creating. It can feel really alienating and isolating when you're treated with that level of impersonality and made to feel that you're not really valued, you're just a cog in the machine rather than a human being. So those are some downfalls of bureaucracies in our society.